Chapter 1, Embrace Your Dreams. We are in the combat simulator and we are getting tutorialized in the fantastic world of Crisis Core Reunion. The full title for this game is apparently Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, which is just so many titles, isn't it? What were they thinking with that one? But this is a mission that's going to be introducing you to some of the combat, and the previous video wasn't long enough for me to talk about it at all. Whereas this one, we've got a bit more meat to it, so we can definitely talk about what's happening in the run, what's going to be happening later on, the kind of plot that I'm going to be going through as far as my acquiring of items and my strategies, and where we're going to end up at the end. And there is a lot of stuff you can do with this game, because it both is an RPG built at a time where RPGs had some real mechanics going on inside of them, and it's been revised in this new version where they enable player input to make a bit more of a difference than it did in the previous version of this game. I went back and played some of the PSP one. I didn't play it much at the time when it first came out because I didn't have the system. Then I emulated it a little bit and I kind of didn't understand it. I thought it looked cool, I thought it seemed cool, and you know, Final Fantasy VII is cool, but it was one of those games I always meant to play and then I always forgot to kind of do so. But this game is considerably faster, and there is a lot more that the player can do to govern the outcome of the fights. And this early area here in the forest against these Wutai soldiers, I'm just going to be showing you a strategy where when you press attack in this game, with the melee attack as the main character, you will lunge at the enemy, and then you can dodge away and then lunge immediately back at them. And early on, when you don't have much magic or much damage or much equipment to make much of a difference, this will be one of the best ways to engage, and a lot of the enemies in this game are going to attack very quickly. They start their attacks really fast. Some of them don't. Like a fight like this, the standard Wutai soldier likes to do some procrastinating by twirling and such, but if he runs towards you, it means he's going to whack you, and you always want to kind of move away from that if you can. And how this is going to work is, right now we have access to a handful of spells, one of these being Dark Thunder, and Thunder is my favourite spell, as you probably saw in the previous video where I was going full Emperor Palpatine. And the reason for it is it's directional. So you can hit multiple people if you angle it correctly, and it casts pretty quickly too. So early game you're going to see me using it quite a lot. You won't see me using it too much late game, because it falls out of favour with some of the other crowd controls we can use. But if you can get the dark variants of this particular materia, it will add certain status ailments on it. And you start off with the standard fire, the standard blizzard, you know, the standard thunder. And it doesn't go like it did in Final Fantasy VII, where it went fire 1, fire 2, fire 3. Instead, it follows from the terminology that was added in the sequel Final Fantasy game. So instead, we go to the Ara and the Aga and whatnot. And in this game, you can apply these dark attributes to them, which is just a more powerful version of that materia. And then additionally, you can then level them to the Hell variant, which I think is one of the strongest. And then of course there is the Tri version, which is a multicast of a very big materia. So there's plenty of legs if you want to go down the magic route. But you'll notice right now a few features with magic. It makes you very vulnerable, it's quite slow, and it has a lot of recovery. And when you're being bombarded like this, you really need to kind of stay on your toes. And you'll notice just then that when I hit that guy with lightning, it hit him with 2 status effects. The first of which I think was poison, the second of which was silence. So that is one of the bonuses of having the dark variant, and that's kind of what you want to do if you are going to be using magic, which I think you will be, because it's so good in this game. Additionally, in the previous video, they tutorialized that the more attacks you do in your basic string when you do a combat skill will increase the damage of your combat skill. So if you do 1 hit and then the combat skill, it will be at that multiplied by 1 on the attacks, and if you do the full string, you will have the maximum amount of strength you can get before we get the stance later on. And something I didn't realise until I was really banging my head against a couple of fights in the game, is that when you go into stance mode, it increases the damage of your certain combat skills. And initially, I was of the belief system that I wasn't going to use too much of the stance, because the block on it still leads to derivative damage, and the attacks that it does are quite slow, even though they can be quite dangerous. But it turns out, if you use it as a modifier to go into a skill, you can get some damage you do not deserve. And it led all the way to my strategy to beat the final boss. And I had no problems with circumventing the RPG systems and playing this game like an action game for 99% of the game, and then every so often you hit a boss and the bosses are massively scaled statistically and defensively, and then you have to start getting really creative. And a couple of the bosses are going to hit you like that. Like Bahamut's kind of tricky if you don't get jump early, and I didn't this time somehow. I managed to miss that, which made him a lot more difficult than he needed to be. I also had a ton of trouble with Sephiroth. Sephiroth was just so strong, so much HP, an absurd amount of engagements needed to beat him. And then in the end, when I came back after I'd acquired some more materia and some better equipment, I ended up leaning into the strategy that I found using the stance, which really helped me during that fight. And then, of course, a couple of the Angeal fights, like one of the Angeal fights was a little bit difficult just because he has this charge move with a massive active hitbox, but other than that, that wasn't too bad. You can space most of what he does. One of the first fights against the Duran Duran villain guy, whose name I'll never remember because he's essentially just like a hairpiece for David Bowie, he was a bit tanky on one of the first fights, but I learned his moveset and it was absolutely fine, so I didn't have too many issues there. And then, of course, the final boss. The final boss has 950,000 HP, I think. It's a lot of HP. When I first went into that room, I was doing like 8,000 damage to him, so as you can imagine, it wasn't looking good. But I ended up going into the missions to try to get the break damage limit accessory known as the Brutal. And I don't know this game very well, guys, to go through it and know what mission unlocks what mission and everything. So I was just kind of doing the missions and banging my head against some really awkward situations. And you learn pretty quickly on those missions that the game is not created equally. Some of the fights are incredibly difficult and some of them are very, very simple. And there doesn't seem to be any middle ground with it either. Like, there's some encounters which you literally will have to just repeatedly rinse it until the DMV gives you the shit you need to win. And I haven't mentioned that, but it needs to be said early on because I'm going to be bitching about this a lot. Up in the top left in this game, you'll notice that there are these rotating roulettes that have character faces on them. It's called the DMW, but I call it the DMV because I'm stupid like that. And it leads to these augmentations that happen randomly while you're playing. And every so often you will get these passives that will help you out. Some of them are incredibly broken, some of them are incredibly stupid. Like it's something that adds unnecessarily randomness to every encounter, and later on, if you play the game in a suboptimal level, quite low percentage on your missions completed and your equipment and your stats and whatnot, you are going to be at the mercy of these roulettes, and sometimes they will be plentiful, and other times they will not. So there were certain fights in the game, guys, where I had to get the ability to guard all physical damage, or I just couldn't survive a hit coming up. There were times where I had to do the same with magic, where I got the magical nullification. There were times where I needed a certain roulette power to shut down those moments where the enemy goes into that 100% stagger moment, where if you don't break their stance, they will do a really powerful move. Like, I needed all kinds of augmentations to get past things like that, because you simply just do not have what it takes. And most of this game is really good if you play against the elements, and you play against the weaknesses, and you play with your strengths. But there's one moment in some fights that you'll see on the boss coming up on this level. There are moments where the game does the purple bar, it does the interesting power stance move, and if you cannot break that stance, if you cannot meet that criteria, you can't do anything about it. And this is where this game really loses me, because it's easily my top 3 combat systems in Final Fantasy. And I really like the idea. I think they came so close to being perfect, but they fucked it up with this bar nonsense. So every move in this game can pretty much be iframed through if you know what you're doing and you time it correctly, which is really good. But when that bar turns up, it is a programmed cutscene that hit scans you, and you do not get the opportunity to dodge. It's like a skill check that takes no skill. So they give you an opportunity to break it. If you can't break it because you don't have like 60 levels in strength or whatever, they do a move that you have no chance of doing anything to. And I have no problem with a boss having a strong move that takes a big build-up and they give you a chance to stop it. I have every problem with that move coming out and me having no opportunity to try to dodge it. I don't mind if the dodge is difficult. You know, I've done some really difficult dodges in this game and it feels cool. But when they don't give you the chance, it just feels cheap. And it feels like there's times when I was going through some of the missions to get some gear where I'd get to a fight where I know I can beat this, but I literally have to rinse and repeat until I get this random RNG bullshit to survive this one moment. And then sometimes you'd come up with a strategy where the enemy wouldn't do it, so you could manipulate the enemy to stop them doing the thing that would kill you, and everything else was free. And you stumble into it when you try and unlock the Wutai shop. So I knew that getting the Wutai shop early was going to be really helpful because you can buy the hell versions of the elemental attacks, and I wanted that materia. What I didn't remember is just how fucking annoying that giant monster with the axe that has 7 billion HP and just decides every so often to kill you instantly and do insane damage that you cannot dodge. So getting past moments like that turned into like rolling dices rather than anything skillful. And we need to take into consideration that this game is a JRPG, and it comes from a sacred time of JRPGs where they gave you all of these wonderful tools. I have not seen a JRPG in a long time give you the tools that this game gives you. It gives you a preposterous amount of ways to get strong. Earlier today, when I was doing some recording, I was looking at how I could beef up my defense against magic, and I noticed that Draenga, when you master it as a materia, gives you 500% HP. It took my HP from 4000 to max without breaking the damage limit or the HP limit. Like, absurd benefits if you want to. Like, if you know what you're doing and you really want to go in there, you can start manipulating the magic pots, you can start getting items, you can start doing all kinds of things and working your way through it. There are so many opportunities to get strong in this game, it's crazy. And I tried my best, guys, to avoid them as much as I could so I could focus on the skill side of it, which is silly but fun. And I would get to points where, like these guys, this move right here, this is what I'm talking about. If I can't break this move comes out and I have to eat this damage, because I cannot dodge it, but luckily I was able to bust it because they gave me a long time to do so. And it wouldn't have mattered because I'm actually invincible right now. So if anybody whacks me physically, it won't do any damage. I can stand in their face and just beat up on them, but I didn't want to do that because it makes it feel like I'm just exploiting that system, and later on I'm going to exploit that system because you need it sometimes. But fundamentally, I think it makes the game less satisfying to play. It reminds me of No More Heroes. In No More Heroes, there are these incredibly strong features that you do not get any kind of access to skillfully. They happen randomly, and when the game gives it you, it feels like you're literally being given welfare, and when it doesn't, it feels like they just left you hanging, and it's just not fun. But I really like this enemy fundamentally, because all of his moves can be dodged, and you can roll backwards away from them, you can walk away from them if you react quick enough, but there's a few things you need to bear in mind here that'll get you killed. When Zack does his 3-hit combo, there's a moment afterwards where you can start ending that chain with a big hit, but there's a lot of delay. So if you're scared of a move coming out and you want to dodge, only attack once. Attack once, wait, attack once, wait, attack once, and you will get the best recovery you can get. If you think you have a second or two, do 3 hits and wait for them to swing and then dodge. However, if they give you more time, feel free to go into that ender to get the 5 hits and get the big modifier on your ability. Like I'm going to do here, and I'm going to do a skill, and hopefully I'm going to break his, and I can't do it, he's going to hit me now. So this is mandatory damage, this guys, because I couldn't break his hit. And I could have broken it, perhaps if I'd have done it better and chosen better choices, but it's kind of, this move here, you can sidestep it, you do not have to roll that move. You can completely move around him. You can even sidestep his swipe, but his swipe is so quick, and if you go to the wrong side, it has a massive hitbox. But you need to get comfortable fighting this enemy. If you're going to be trying to beat this game at a lower level and not really doing the RPG stuff, this guy's going to be the bane of your life until you get gravity. I think darkness might help as well. If you get darkness, you might be okay. But do not sleep on gravity. It's one of the only ways this challenge can really be done. Without gravity and Graviga, without darkness for certain enemies, without jump, without the stance when you use the Buster Sword, like, I don't know if I would have been able to finish this. I mean, I could have, if I'd have done it a traditional method, but who wants to watch that, right, guys? There's plenty of people doing the JRPG route on this game. Go watch those guys. Fascinating playthroughs that do all the stuff I did when I was a kid, Back in the days of maxing stats on Final Fantasy VIII and maxing stats on Final Fantasy X and whatnot. Maxing out all the materias and maxing your money in Final Fantasy VII, doing all the crazy things we used to do when you had infinite time and there was no internet. Which I suppose for a lot of people listening to this are probably like, what? There was a time before internet? There was. Crazy, right? But we've got a couple of standard soldiers here that are attacking us. And this is going to be leading to, I believe it's going to be an Ifrit fight. And I really like the Ifrit fight in this game. But again, it has the same problem I've already mentioned. Ifrit does Hellfire, and if you can't stop it, you have to eat it. And he's very weak to Blizzard for obvious reasons, but his moves are the same here. What he likes to do is he likes to run away, and he'll throw 2 flame shots at you right here. You can just strafe these, they're not a big issue. And then when he comes close, he will do this like uppercut into a slam. If you attack him, he'll try to kick you after 2 hits, and then you can roll away. Or you can just bait this, attack him once or twice, and keep doing this. And that kick there is the most dangerous move, but you can just space it. And this is where the problem is right now. If you can't stop this, you're going to get hit by something you need to survive. And we got it down to 25% damage, so hopefully it won't be too bad. But if you look at it, it's going to hit me hard. And I just wish they would give you the opportunity to dodge it, because I know I could, you know? I've been fighting like Neo Bahamut and all the dirty Bahamuts and dodging his ridiculous stomps and stuff, and some of those dodges are really tight unless you jump. And if I can do that, I can dodge some of this. But we get the Octaslash level 3. Something really cool about the DMV moves is you can use them to cancel attacks. If there's an attack an enemy has you don't like, keep one of those abilities on the side, and when he starts doing it, press Y or triangle, and it will completely stop him from doing what he's doing and show you that animation. It's really, really handy. It's also a good idea sometimes to keep these moves to break their stance on those charge spells, because they will do more damage than you can do. And I don't know the best way to make those abilities strong. I don't know much about them, truth be told, guys, but if you can use what makes those things augmented, you'll be killing it. Because if you're wondering which ones I'm going to build towards, I'm going to get the Lucky Shot, the Cessna DMV. I'm going to get that one. And I'm going to use that materia that makes it happen a bit more frequently, because when you get that one, it has a tendency to bring back your AP, your MP, and your HP. It also gives you critical hits, which are going to help me do a lot more damage. So I'm going to build towards using that to help me out, to augment my stats a little bit. But you don't have to do that, there's plenty of other ones you can do. This is going to be, if you haven't already guessed, I'm not going to be using items in the battles, and I'm not going to be healing outside of when Ares does her DMV. And the reason I'll be using Ares is because she brings your MP back. And the biggest problem with a challenge like this, as you can see right now, I've ran out of Blizzard because I don't have any MP and I can't use any items. So I have to fight him and I don't have good damage. So it turns into a fighting game now. We're turning it into a character action game. This is a Pain Plus run right here. And all we're waiting for is that right there. See the slot? Give me infinite MP. Now I can use Blizzard, but I don't think I've noticed because I'm too in the... Oh no, I've noticed. There you go, I noticed. But I'm too in the fight to realise that I can be using Blizzard right now. I do this a lot. And then the fight after this will be another Ifrit fight inside of the missions, but it'll be much quicker because we've got a lot more equipment for it. Oh, I'm telling a lie, maybe that's on a future video. That might be on the one after this. Thank you for watching, and you take care now.